Fellas, we just saw at UFC 294, there was a huge kind of rivalry that was supposed to be built between Brazilians and Russians. Obviously, it was supposed to be Costa Chimaev. I know Chimaev's not Russian, but it was supposed to be Costa on there. We were supposed to have Oliveira and Islam, Magomed Ankalaev and Walker. We had Ikram against Alves as well. There were so many Russian versus Brazilian matchups on that card, and today I've decided to do like a Brazilian versus a Russian kind of rivalry in every UFC weight class. This is just because Russia and Brazil, for me, they're competing for second place in like the most stacked country in terms of MMA. I'm going to have to give USA number one, but Brazil and Russia are definitely up there with the top three. So there's so many Brazilian fighters and Russian fighters in the UFC, so I thought let's do it. Another thing I want to clarify is I'm not saying that the matchups make sense. So for example, half of the people on this list will already have a fight booked. This is just like fantasy matchups between a Brazilian and a Russian, but either way, you get what I'm trying to say. Heavyweight division, I'm going Jelton Almeida and Sergey Pavlovich. I can't wait for this matchup to happen, and I'm almost certain it's going to happen eventually. As long as Jelton Almeida, you know, gets past what's he called, Derek Lewis, I can definitely see this fight happening in the future. Whether Pavlovich is champ or not, as long as these guys stick around for a few more years, I'm almost guaranteed that we're going to see this fight. And it'd be such a fun fight because we've got Jelton Almeida, who's probably the biggest threat on the feet. The biggest threat on the ground in the division. And then we've got Sergey Pavlovich, who's on like a 6-fight first round knockout streak. So it's genuinely the most, like, it's a guaranteed finish. This fight just a guaranteed finish. If Jelton Almeida can get it to the floor, he's going to submit Pavlovich. If Pavlovich can keep it on the feet, he's sleeping Almeida. I can't wait for this matchup. Brazilian grappler versus Russian striker. Yeah, this is really interesting. You could have also picked Volkov, because I know Alexander Volkov's Russian as well and he's in the heavyweight division, but I think this fight would have so much, no disrespect to Volkov, listen, he's on a streak right now, but I feel like this matchup specifically would have way more hype around it. It would have way more buzz around it, and like I said, I genuinely believe this is going to happen one day. I can't wait for it to happen. Almeida versus Pavlovich. Headline. This could be a headliner for a fight night. I think it's past the beyond the fight night stage. I want to see this fight on pay-per-view now because this is massive. But yeah, Almeida versus Pavlovich. This is definitely the heavyweight fantasy matchup for me. In Brazil and Russia. Light heavyweight. I'm going back. I want to see Walker versus Magomed Ankalaev. I really want to see this fight because it's so close. I know this fight was supposed to happen at UFC 294. The doctor ruined it. My prediction was that Magomed Ankalaev was going to win by decision, but this fight is really, really close. Like, it's not like it's going to be one-side domination from Ankalaev or Walker. It could have gone either way because Walker's looked good in his past few fights. Got a couple of finishes out there, obviously, with Craig and Cutelaba. I really wanted to see this fight, and I feel like we were robbed. So if they're going to book this fight again, there's always UFC Sao Paulo, but maybe it's too soon for that to put this match up on the card because I know Walker's been cutting his eyebrow. Maybe there's a couple main event fight nights coming up. Maybe stick this card on UFC 295. I think that would be a good idea to stick it on 295 because that card outside of the co-main event is kind of lacking. Plus we've got Pereira on there, who's Brazilian as well. I really want to see this fight in the light heavyweight division. I know there's Pereira in the light heavyweight division, but I feel like this rivalry's it's already a rivalry as well. They tried fighting each other after the fight had been stopped. When the ref called it off, they were eager to fight each other. I want them to rematch as soon as possible. It's just a shame Walker's been cut already. It's a really competitive fight. We were robbed of this matchup. I want to see this fight regardless. I genuinely believe they don't like each other. Maybe they do like each other and it's just, you know, they're really competitive and they want to beat each other, and maybe it was the heat of the moment, but I want to see this fight. I want to see Walker versus Ankalaev. Winner gets a title shot after, obviously, Jamal Hill when he comes back, or maybe even before Jamal Hill, but I want to see them fight. That's the rivalry for the light heavyweight division. Middleweight. They were supposed to fight before. There's going to be a theme of fights on this card where they were booked at one point and now they're not. But Paulo Costa versus Ikram Aliskerov. If this didn't make sense before, it definitely makes sense now. They were booked before. There was a lot of talk saying that Ikram didn't deserve it. He only had one fight in the UFC. Now he's just gone out there and got a first round finish against Alves in the first round. I know I just said that twice. By a jumping knee as well. Great finish. Ikram Aliskerov looks really impressive. Needs to fight a ranked opponent, and I think we rebook him against Costa. Costa's been out since September 2022. Costa's last fight was Luke Rockhold in September 2022. He hasn't. No, it was August actually. It was August 2022, and he's probably not going to be back until 2024. He needs a comeback fight. Why doesn't he fight a guy? He's not fighting a Khamzat Chimaev. It's an easier fight than Khamzat. It's Ikram Aliskerov. 2 fights in the UFC, 2 finishes as well. I believe his first fight was a finish, right? But yeah, they were scheduled for 290. Ikram just beat a Brazilian, so I guess there's a kind of, I don't know, Paulo Costa can get maybe revenge because Ikram just beat a Brazilian. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but I want to see them fight. Costa would make it fun, and he's one of the few middleweights in the division that I actually, you know, he's one of the few middleweights in the division full stop, actually. Like, there's not much middleweights in the, not much Brazilians in the middleweight division, so I want to see Costa and Ikram Aliskerov fight. It'd be a fun fight as well. It would be such a, like, a technical fight. Probably not going to go the distance. Paulo Costa's, you know, is more experienced, he's fought, you know, better guys, but Ikram Aliskerov has looked good. But then again, you can also argue that Costa, you know, he got a lot of finishes on his first 4 fights in the UFC, so I don't know. I want to see this matchup. We were robbed of the matchup because Costa pulled out, and now he's just pulled out again against Khamzat. Let's rebook this fight. Yeah, this would be a fun fight to watch. Maybe even like a featured fight for a pay-per-view, I don't know, but I want to see this fight. Welterweight. I'm not going to pronounce his last name because I'm not trying to do no Chael Sonnen butchers. But Renat versus Vicente Luque. If you don't know who Renat is, he's essentially the guy that went out there and absolutely demolished Kevin Lee on the Abbas Magomedov versus Strickland card. Yeah, he demolished Kevin Lee. He's 21-1. Renat is super underrated. He's such a threat. One of the best grapplers in the welterweight division. I know I say that for every up-and-coming grappler in every division, but he's genuinely a really talented grappler. He hits like a truck as well. He's a hard hitter. 21-1. I mean, that record, Islam was at that record not long ago. He's just not, he needs to be getting the hype. This guy deserves to be, the hype deserves to be on this guy. Super underrated, beating everyone in the UFC so far. But the thing that makes this matchup good is they're both absolute killers, because Vicente Luque, someone said this before, he's kind of like the silent killer. Like, he doesn't speak much, he doesn't do much press, but when he's in the octagon, he's always in a scrap, always in a brawl, and this will be an all-out war. It wouldn't be a boring fight. I genuinely think Renat is too much of a threat to make it a boring fight like Belal Muhammad. It'd be a scrap, it'd be a war, and it's the first kind of proper test for Renat to see, listen, if you beat a guy like Luque, who's a legitimate fighter, you need to be fighting the top guys. Luque, he's just beaten Rafael dos Anjos, but listen, Rafael dos Anjos has been in the UFC longer than everyone else besides, what's his name? Heavyweight guy, I forgot his name. But yeah, Vicente Luque, he needs to step up in competition. Already lost to Belal Muhammad, he's lost to Edwards. Let's give him Renat. This fight will be a banger. Brazilian versus Russian. I really want to see this fight, like, a lot. So let's book this fight. I don't know when. I know, I think, isn't Vicente Luque booked now? I don't think he's booked, but I want to see this fight regardless. I don't know if Renat's ranked or not, though. He might be in top 15. I don't know about top 10, but I'd love to see this matchup. Lightweight, I'm not going to talk too much because this rivalry is already, you know, it's been written by itself, but we need to see Charles Oliveira versus Islam. The best Brazilian in the UFC versus the best Russian in the UFC right now. It is the perfect rivalry to make in the lightweight division. Do I think Charles Oliveira should fight for the title next? I actually don't think that. I'd much rather see Gaethje next, but this is the best Brazilian versus Russian rivalry we can get. I think in the UFC, we've got the whole of Brazil behind Charles Oliveira. You know, he went out there, he had a decent lightweight streak, obviously finishing Gaethje, Poirier, just finished Beneil Dariush as well, finished Michael Chandler, beat Ferguson as well. And then obviously we've got Islam Makhachev, who's just knocked out Volkanovski. He beat him before as well, and he's also beaten Oliveira. They fought before. I want to see them go again. They were scheduled to go again. Like I said, that would be a theme, but they were scheduled to go again. I want to see them fight again down the line. It is legitimately the best versus the best at lightweight. People like to bring up the fact that, you know, Volkanovski's the best featherweight and then Holloway's the second best. Or, you know, back in the day, Adesanya was the best middleweight and Whittaker was the second best. This is exactly what it is for the lightweight division. Islam's the best, Oliveira's the second best, that's just how it is, but it's such an exciting matchup. I really want to see them fight again. Do I think Islam wins in a rematch? 100%. No doubt on my mind, but if Oliveira can somehow pull it off, that would be really impressive. But lightweight, like I said, not going to talk too much on this one, but this rivalry's already written itself. Featherweight. Movsar Evloev versus Edson Barboza. Yeah, Evloev's booked against Arnold Allen, but I'd love to see him against Edson Barboza. Edson Barboza's looked really good in his past few fights. Obviously knocked out Billy Q, got the win over Sadiq Youssef as well. Edson Barboza's still got it, and he's one of the most dangerous strikers in the UFC. This is a classic striker versus grappler matchup. I said this about Pavlovich and Almeida. If Barboza can keep it on the feet, he's going to beat Evloev pretty comfortably, but that's a big if, because Evloev can grapple. Barboza's definitely got much more of a finishing threat than Evloev does. I'm not sure how many finishes Evloev has in the UFC, but I don't think he's got a lot of finishes. But it could actually happen. This fight could actually happen. If Movsar Evloev loses to Arnold Allen in their fight night, I wouldn't mind seeing this matchup, because Edson Barboza deserves a somewhat big fight. I know he lost to Bryce Mitchell not long ago, so this is the problem. Edson Barboza needs to be able to survive with Evloev's grappling, because the guy couldn't get past to Bryce Mitchell's. But if if Evloev loses to Allen, I'd love to see this matchup. Evloev's a big prospect right now, undefeated as well, I believe. Classic striker versus grappler. I want to see this fight. Barboza deserves a big fight now, or at least a step up in competition. Evloev's booked against Allen. If Evloev loses, let's see the fight. And then finally, Bantamweight. And I say finally because in the flyweight division, there's so many Brazilians. We know we got Figueiredo, the champion as well. But there's just not many Russians in the flyweight division, so I've completely missed off that. So if you can think of any fantasy matchups between a Brazilian and a Russian in the flyweight division right now, please let me know, because I'm really struggling. But for bantamweight, I've gone Pedro Munoz versus Umar Nurmagomedov. Yeah, I wouldn't mind this matchup at all. Pedro Munoz is way tougher than people give him credit for. He went out there, did pretty good against what's his name, Marlon Vera. Some people thought he won the fight. I don't think he won the fight, but he put the pace, he put the pressure on Marlon Vera. As well as that, he also fought O'Malley. It was a no contest, I believe, because Munoz got injured. I think he had an eye poke that went wrong. But Munoz is tough. He's got genuine finishing ability. But Umar Nurmagomedov, listen, he's got the Nurmagomedov last name, trains with Khabib, 14-0, and he needs a legitimate contender. We can all keep talking about the potential of Umar, but he needs to fight a legit contender, and he hasn't done that yet. Pedro Munoz is the perfect measuring kind of fighter for Umar Nurmagomedov. Munoz is tough and tricky, and that's definitely not an easy fight for Umar. But if Umar can get past Pedro Munoz, then we need to start matching him up against proper contenders like Sandhagen, like Barab, like Aljo as well, maybe. Umar's an undefeated prospect though. I'd probably got Umar to win this fight just because of listen, he looks amazing, but he looks amazing against bums. But Pedro Munoz versus Umar, close fight. I really want to see the fight in the bantamweight. I just want to see Umar fight a legitimate contender, and this is the only Brazilian I can think of that would fit this role. But yeah, those are my rivalries for Brazilian and Russians. Let me know if you've got any rivalries down below, especially for flyweight, because I really struggle with that division. And yeah, thank you for watching.